We'll stick with that. And the importance of the bank of mum and dad, or in some instances friends. 25% of house purchases in the last 12 months wouldn't have happened without that sort of deposit, those sort of funds. We'll look at that in more detail. But as we've been discussing already during this show, as the race for mayor enters the final 48 hours, you can hear from all the candidates here on LBC. The Green Party's Sian Berry joins James O'Brien at 12:45 today. UKIP's Peter Whittle is speaking with Sheila Fogarty at 2:30 this afternoon. Tomorrow, Labour candidate Sadiq Khan is on with James O'Brien at 11 o'clock, and Caroline Pidgeon from the Lib Dems joins Sheila at 2:30 tomorrow. All of which means that I can introduce to you the Conservative candidate, Zac Goldsmith, who's in the studio and here to take your calls. Mr Goldsmith, thank you again for coming in. You've been very good and courteous. You've come in on a number of occasions. We are approaching, as I say, the final hours. How are you feeling?
Feeling very good. I'm hoping to do a Leicester City here. Go zoom in from behind and win on May the 5th. I'm feeling very good about the campaign. The thing is, as we get closer, this is a huge election. It will, whoever is in City Hall will have a massive impact on the lives of every single person in London, and people know that now. They're engaging, and they know that the choice today is clearer than it has ever been in any previous mayoral election. The gap between Boris and Ken was big. The gap between what I'm standing for and what the Labour Party represents today could not be wider.
What does the Labour Party represent today?
If voters want council tax flat for 4 years, there's only one choice in this election, that's me. If they wanted a continued investment in transport to keep London moving, keep London growing, there's only one choice. If we want those 50,000 homes that everyone is promising, but to have them built well, not on the our green spaces, but built beautifully to enhance communities, I'm the only one talking about that. And if they want London to be kept safe, there is only one person in this race who's going to give the police the tools, the resources and the backing they need to keep us safe. The choice is really clear, and the Labour Party today, I think, has gone bonkers. I think its offer to London, its offer to the British people is more aggressive, more anti-business, more anti-everything that matters than at any time in my life. So the gap is huge.
I won't steal the thunder of callers. I know the first caller is going to be on the subject of terror. Just before we take the calls, if you look at the polls, and of course it's worth reminding everybody what the polls told us almost a year ago as regards the general election, but if you look at the polls, you're not Leicester, you're Aston Villa. You've lost.
Thank you, Nick. As you say, the polls got it horrifically wrong at the last election. The feeling we have thousands upon thousands of people out right now, knocking on doors, handing literature out, and the feedback we're getting is overwhelmingly positive. So if I judge my chances by what we're hearing on the ground, I feel like we're on course for a good win on May the 5th. But we won't know till the day.
And can I apologise, as you have alluded to Leicester City, if you were listening, there is a personal investment. I don't hold with fat men wearing football shirts, but it does mean a lot, and Leicester did...
you look magnificent.
It could be what Gary Lineker's got to do, show in his underpants.
Has he?
He's got to do match today in his underpants, yeah. So you're lucky I'm just wearing a Leicester shirt.
Yeah, well... It's a handsome look.
Thank you. Please put on your headphones as we get ready to put your first call to the Conservative candidate, Zac Goldsmith, and it's Ella in Sutton, touching briefly on something that Mr Goldsmith mentioned. Ella, go ahead.
Good morning, Ella.
Zac Goldsmith. My question to you is, quite frankly, at the moment, since Paris and Brussels, I'm very scared to put my kids on the tube, and I was wondering what you will do to keep my family, my children, and others across London safe.
Thank you very much, Ella. I mean, when we first began this campaign, when I first threw my hat in the ring, security was really low down on the agenda in terms of people's concerns. It's obviously gone shooting up because of appalling things that have happened in Brussels and Paris and elsewhere. The number one responsibility of the Mayor of London is to keep London safe. It's not the biggest challenge, but it's the biggest responsibility. It is an awesome responsibility. I'm going to put 500 more police on the tube, not paid for by the Met, which can't afford it, but paid for out of savings from TfL. 500 new police on the tube to deal with the anxiety that travellers have and the fact that the tube network is a target, and we know that. But I'm also going to keep police numbers at 32,000 generally, and I can do that because I secured a deal with the Chancellor, who was proposing to inflict huge cuts on the Met just a few months ago, and I, along with colleagues in London, talked him out of that. We now know with certainty that for the full 4 years of this mayoralty, I can keep police numbers at least at 32,000. I think we can go further than that, but I don't want to promise anything that I'm not absolutely certain that I can deliver. But there is another thing, if I can just extend the answer, and that is that it's not just about police, and it's not just about guns and finance. It is also, I think there's something more important. The police need to know that whoever occupies City Hall is going to give them their back and is on their side. I've been to speak to armed response officers at the Met. I've been to speak to British transport officers who are on the front line, putting their lives on the line on our behalf over and over again, protecting us. And I think we are all, everyone listening to this in London, hopelessly indebted to what they do. They need to know that as they make those split-second decisions, the mayor and the mayor's team are on their side. And if I'm elected on May the 5th, they will know that.
Ella, come back to you in just a second. The Commissioner was with me the week before last, Mr Goldsmith, saying he's keen to get more armed officers on the streets and indeed keen to increase the rollout of tasers. Do you support both those initiatives?
I do, and he is asking for an approval, effectively, to double the number of armed response vehicles, and I absolutely back that. I don't want militarisation of our police across London. I don't want to see machine gun-wielding police wandering down Barnes High Street, but we need to know that we're prepared, and that's what he's asking for. In the event that bad stuff happens in London, and no one can pretend that that's never going to happen.
Do you think that's likely in your term?
We are a target. There have been 7 serious incidents prevented in the last 12 months by our security services, and they've done a magnificent job, but we can't pretend that no one's ever going to slip through the net. So we need to be prepared, and one of the things that means is ensuring that the police are able to respond in sufficient numbers should something bad happen.
How comfortable are you with more tasers as well?
It's something which I have proposed to the Home Secretary myself. I think the police should. It is it's a non-lethal but very effective way to remove obstacles, to remove dangers. So I back the police in that.
Quick response from Ella. Ella, quick response from you.
Thank you. I do appreciate what you said, and actually what you said is quite reassuring. I do feel like the mayor should be on the side of the police, and I'm grateful for your answer. Thank you.
Ella, thank you very much for that. To Pip in Welling. Go ahead, Pip. You're on the radio.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Zac.
Hello.
Morning, Pip.
I'd like to ask you, Zac, how you feel about the campaign for running for the greatest job on the planet has been derailed by this hideous anti-Semite riot and yourself sort of using the 7/7 bombing analogy. What's that got to do with London now? We are such an extraordinary capital. You should be concentrating on and talking to us about proper issues like transport and why we're not using our greatest resource, which is our streets, better. We're only using it 12 hours a day. It's almost like a wacky races. We've got commuters, kids, parents, kids on mums, freight and such, all using the same roads, but for 12 hours a day. I worked in retail, and we had this ridiculous thing where trucks come in the big department stores in a time slot, but if they're just 2 minutes late, they were turned away, and then they had to chug around London again.
Pip, I will bring you back in. There's a couple of important charges. Have you, in a way, debased your campaign? This is, of course, you were accused of a smear campaign against your Labour rival. You were also criticised by Saida, now Baroness Varsi, my apologies, after an article you wrote, which you wouldn't have put the illustration in, I appreciate, but it had a bus that was destroyed in the terror attacks in London. Mr Goldsmith?
Yeah. Well, look, as you know, as a journalist, and as any journalist listening knows, that when you write an article for a paper, you don't choose the headline, you don't choose the image. When I saw the image, I felt that it was inappropriate. I let that be known publicly and privately. The article that I wrote, I stand by every word. I encourage everyone to read it, but it was not making
Mr.
reference
Khan
to...
is someone who thinks terrorists are his friends, or Labour Party thinks that terrorists are its friends.
So the article made no reference at all to 7/7, which is why I would not have used that image. But the article, the words in the article, my words, are absolutely right. That the Labour Party, including Sadiq Khan, including Jeremy Corbyn, have given legitimacy over and over again to people who hold extreme views. There's no doubt. And actually, during the election campaign, the leadership campaign in which Jeremy Corbyn was involved, Yvette Cooper, savaged him for having given legitimacy to people with extreme views. She said that these people should not be associated in any way with the party. Well, the same is true of Sadiq Khan, whose links, I think, are far more extensive. And if it's correct and appropriate to ask those questions of Jeremy Corbyn, why is it not appropriate to ask those questions of Sadiq Khan? But on the broader issue, look, my campaign is overwhelmingly a positive one. I've done 3, 4, 5 public meetings almost every day of this campaign throughout Greater London. And as I stand there in front of audiences who are not vetted, people can come and chuck buns at me if they want. I'm talking about my action plan for Greater London: more homes, better transport, safer streets.
What's positive in a leaflet seeming to warn Indian voters that a vote for Mr. Khan could put their family jewellery at risk?
Well, that's not actually what the leaflet says. The leaflet says that the party which he belongs to, of which he is a principal architect, having nominated Jeremy Corbyn, believes in heirloom taxes and the works, and that is a statement of fact. But the Labour Party, to try and pretend it's unusual to send leaflets to at different parts of our community. It's just complete rubbish. Sadiq Khan's campaign has been putting leaflets out in Punjabi. I'm guessing, Nick, you didn't get one of them. There's
I did not.
Polish leaflets and Hebrew leaflets.
I get a heck of a lot about you, by the way. But go on.
I'm thrilled. I'm so happy to hear that. That's what you do in election campaigns. But in every piece of literature that I put out, it's about my action plan for Greater London. Homes, transport, security, making London the greenest and cleanest city in the world without putting a penny on council tax and delivering it by working with this government. That is a central message in every single piece of literature that I have put out.
Yes, his party, Mr. Khan's party, you say, supports a wealth tax on family jewellery.
Is that a question?
No, that's from your leaflet.
Well, yes, and that's correct. John McDonnell has made the point on numerous occasions.
All right, let's get a response from what you're hearing. Pip, come back to you, Pip.
Oh, well, I don't know if he's reading off a script there.
No, I can assure you he's not.
I may be peculiar, but I don't think Londoners actually give a damn about faith. What they care about is their kids' schools, air, the pollution, and these sort of things. And also, having seen all the good work done by Ken Livingstone undone over the last 8 years, with Uber and with this sort of complete sort of deregulation of London, so that we've got a filthy city, and we've got summer coming up, and I'd like to know what you, as an environmentalist with your pedigree, what you actually really do intend to do about it.
Thank you. I mean, look, I agree with you about race and faith and religion. That plays no part in this campaign. The questions I'm asking are about judgment and nothing to do with religion or race or background or any of those things. But you ask a question about pollution, and you're right. This is a massive concern for London. 10,000 lives every year cut short early as a consequence of air pollution. My action plan for London will make Greater London as a whole, not just Central London, a pollution-free area, and we can do it relatively quickly. I know that I can commit, without risk of failure, that every bus in London will be either electric or ultra-low emission zone compliant by the end of the term. We can do the same with our cabs and our mini cabs. We can stop awarding contracts from City Hall to companies whose works vehicles are polluting. I'll create a green car club for the whole of Greater London. Paris is doing this now and it's working. Create an infrastructure charging network so that anxiety about buying an electric car goes, and promote cycling and walking. We have all the tools we need, almost all the tools we need, to make Greater London a pollution-free zone. There are a couple of things we need from government that would make the job easier, not least a London diesel scrappage scheme. But if anyone can get that from government, I can.
Pip, thank you. Question for me, how anti-Semitic do you think the Labour Party is, Mr. Goldsmith?
I think this is an open wound in the Labour Party.
You've had sight of one of the newspapers this morning, 50 members, according to the Daily Telegraph. Labour's suspended 50 members now for racism.
I hadn't seen that, but it's not so. It's appalling, but it's not surprising.
You want to have sight of it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There is a clear. I mean, I almost don't need to read this headline to know that there is a real problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I think it's infected momentum, the organisation that delivered the Corbyn and Khan result. I think it's a problem among councillors, and it's a problem right at the top of the party. And as a respectable a party that wants to be electable, they need to deal with this problem. They cannot be casual about
anti-Semitism. In what way?
anti-Semitism.
They're suspending 50 members.
I think maybe in the last few days it's been a bit of a wake-up call. I hope so. Because look,
how has Mr. Corbyn handled it in your view?
I'm on the other side of the political divide, and part of me, of course, I want the Conservative Party to win and win and win again, but I also want a decent, healthy democracy, and that means having a respectable opposition party, a government in waiting, one that could be elected. And I don't think the Labour Party can. I think what they have put the fear of God into a large chunk of our community, and I think it's not only irresponsible, it's cruel. They need to deal with this issue, and they need to deal with it now.
And just before the next call, you talk about an infection within the Labour Party. That's a very strong word, Mr. Wilson.
I think there is, in relation to anti-Semitism. I mean, look, you see it every day. You see councillors saying, what's happening is that I think the Labour Party, in its opposition to Israel, has sided with people whose opposition to Israel isn't just about Israel. It's an ancient form of hatred which has seen a massive resurgence. And I think the lines have become blurred. And quite often when people attack Israel or they promote the boycott and divestment and sanctions campaign, the BDS campaign, what is actually happening is that anti-Semitism is raising its head in a different guise. That's what's happening. And there's evidence of this every day on Twitter, on social media, even in emails that I occasionally get from Labour supporters.
Other calls. Pippa's in Wandsworth. Go ahead, Pippa.
Good morning, Zac. I just want to know how you're going to protect our Greenbelt land.
Thank you very much, Pippa. That's a lovely question. I have said that I will write into the London Plan, which is a very powerful planning document that the Mayor controls. One of the first things I'll do if I'm elected is to write into that plan the strongest possible legal protection, not just for the Green Belt, but for our metropolitan open land and our green spaces generally. We are blessed in this city to have so much green space. but there is huge pressure and huge temptation among developers and local authorities to develop them. So I will make it an absolute. We don't need to go near the green spaces. We've got masses of brownfield land, much of it owned by the public sector, much of it owned by the government, by us. And we need to get that land released, and then we need to grow the transport network to unlock that land so we can build homes on it. If we build on our green spaces, that will be a reflection of a giant failure on the part of politicians, and that won't happen on my watch.
Quick response from you, Pippa. I imagine that's what you wanted to hear.
That is definitely what I wanted to hear, yes.
All right, Pippa, thank you. We move on. Thanks, Pippa. Bob in Kingston. Bob, you're on the radio. What would you want to ask Zac Goldsmith?
Hi there, Zac. I think you're a very honest man. Listen, I run my own business in Kingston. Why should I pick you over Sadiq Khan? Why would you be better for business?
Well, I'm going to cheat, first of all, and say that every single business organisation has, in every survey that has been conducted, have given me an overwhelming thumbs up, because they know that I am standing on a platform that is about keeping London's economy strong, about working with this government, on which London profoundly depends for its powers and for its funding, to ensure that London continues to keep moving, continues to grow. We're going to have a big opportunity in the next 2 or 3 years' time, when business rates are devolved to London. I intend to use that to do everything I can to make London an even more business-friendly environment. We found £20 million underspent in the GLA budget. I will use that, if elected, to support our struggling high streets. There is an enormous amount we can do to support our businesses. There are 1 million businesses in London. That's 250,000 more than when Boris was elected. Every one of them generating jobs and opportunity, and I will be the mayor for those businesses.
Quick response from you, Bob.
I think that's great. Do you mind if I just say one other thing?
Go ahead.
We're talking about Boris. What are you going to do with the mayor's share of council tax? Boris says cut it. Will you cut it as well?
Yeah, Boris, it's worth pointing this out. Ken Livingstone knocked up council tax by over 150% over his 8 years. Boris has cut it by 10%, and he's managed to keep his promise of ensuring that we have 32,000 police officers or thereabouts. It's a great success story. I've pledged to keep council tax flat for the 4 years. I'll freeze it for the 4 years, and I can do that because of the deal I've done with the government in relation to police funding.
Thank you for that, Bob. Do a couple of email questions, if I can, Mr. Goldsmith. Rachel in Bexley, who's been more beneficial to your campaign, Boris Johnson or David Cameron?
They're totally different. David Cameron...
Say that again.
Okay, I'll say it again. They're totally different. Boris is a human magnet. When he comes out on the campaign trail, people just swarm around him. They want to see him. They want to get selfies with him. They want to talk to him. He's been a magnificent asset. Every time I go out on the trail with him, I just thank the Lord that he's on my side and he's not against me. David Cameron is a figure of huge authority. The Prime Minister speaks with great authority, and going out on the campaign trail with him sends a really important message to Londoners that if you want an effective mayor, that mayor must be able to work with government, because London, unlike some other great cities in the world like
Has he
New York,
campaigned with you enough, Mr. Goldsmith? Has David Cameron worked hard enough for you?
He's campaigned a lot with me, and there will be more to come over the next 48 hours. He has been incredibly helpful.
What's to come? Please tell me.
I'm going to break my own embargo, Nick, even on this wonderful programme.
Okay,
he's been incredibly helpful. People need to know that if you want to be an effective mayor of London, you've got to be able to work with government, because we hand 93% of all the taxes we raise to the Chancellor. We've then got to go cap in hand and beg for some of that money back for our police, for our transport, and for all the things that we need. You need a mayor who can work with government. And the truth is, my opponent in this, my principal opponent, is someone who won't even talk to government, let alone negotiate with them. And it would spell disaster for 4 years. Gridlock, bickering, blame, and nonsense.
Before we go to another call, one last email here from Wendy in Blackheath. Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe at the Met intimated to Nick last week it's time to close down the Madeleine McCann inquiry. Does Zac Goldsmith agree? What he said was if a new line doesn't emerge, he would look at winding up Operation Grange.
I would not. I'm not close enough to it to want to second guess him. As a parent, it's hard to imagine the McCanns having. It's hard to imagine anything worse than what they've gone through. So for as long as there are live leads, the police, I think, are obliged to follow them. But if the leads dry up, then of course at some point the investigation has to end. But
so broadly speaking, you're in favour of that, which is pretty much what Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe told me.
As long as there is genuine hope, then I think they're obliged to continue to follow those leads. But I'm not close enough to it to know. I don't know how real those leads are. My heart goes out to the family, as I suspect everyone listening would agree.
Ali's in Wimbledon. Ali, you're through to Zac Goldsmith. Go ahead.
Hi, Zac.
Hi, Ali.
I want to know why you've run such a vile, disgusting Islamophobic campaign. You sent letters to the Indian communities, to the Indian and Tamil Sikh Londoners, suggesting that Sadiq Khan would not stand up for them as a mayor, making claims that he was indifferent to foreign policy issues. He didn't send letters to the Muslim community, reassuring them they would be safe from terrorism, or from extremism. You then maligned an imam from Tooting, suggested, even your Prime Minister and David Cameron, our Prime Minister, just in Parliament, that he was IS supporter, when in fact he attended events discussing the evils of ISIS. And you've continuously maligned Sadiq Khan, used his background as a Pakistani Muslim or a Muslim of Pakistani descent. And I mean,
all right. I think I'll keep you on the line, but I think you've laid out the case against. Let's hear some defence.
Thank you, Ali. I have to tell you, you are completely and utterly wrong. I have never referenced Sadiq Khan's religion or his ethnic background directly or indirectly. That is simply not true. I understand what you're saying about the leaflets. That has come straight out of the Labour campaign booklet, but it's also not true. I have not only written to people, Indians, Sikhs, Tamils. I've written to everyone I've been able to write to, and that includes Muslims of Pakistani, Somali, Bangladeshi origin. The Labour Party know that, but the reason they have chosen to pretend they don't know that is because they want the Muslim communities of London to feel marginalised. It is completely irresponsible and it's wrong.
Mr. Goldsmith, you have criticised Mr. Khan's judgment for getting on platforms with Islamists.
And I was just coming to that. And
okay.
I think, the reality is that this is a man who wants to be the mayor of London, the mayor of the greatest city in the world, with a huge security remit at a time when we are under threat. And he has chosen over and over and over again, not just as a lawyer or as an MP, sometimes even just as a friend, he has chosen to share platforms with people who are on the wrong side of that ideological battle, people who would wish to do this city harm. And that raises very, very serious questions of judgment, and it is absurd to pretend that those questions shouldn't be asked. It's absurd to pretend that those questions, by asking those questions, I'm somehow racist or Islamophobic. I completely reject that.
But you're aware of Kingston Mosque in your own Richmond constituency today releasing a statement, Mr. Goldsmith.
Yeah, I saw that.
Extremely troubling campaign for their words, the singling out of rival Sadiq Khan because of his Muslim faith. It's, quotes, deeply irresponsible. Zac and his team to express their regret for the damage that's been done. That's a mosque in your own backyard, Mr. Goldsmith.
It's a mosque I'm very close to, and I spoke to the mosque, members of the mosque yesterday, and they've made it very clear that they're reacting to the image used in a Mail on Sunday article, which they believe that was crossed a line. But as I've said to you earlier in this programme, you, as a writer, you don't choose the picture.
Well,
you don't choose the
singling out has nothing to do with the image or the photograph, is it?
Well,
singling out of Sadiq Khan because of his Muslim faith, that's respectfully nothing to do with a picture in a newspaper.
I was referring to the conversation I had.
Right.
The statement they made was on the back of the Mail on Sunday article, not the article.
Heck of a mistake, wasn't it? That image.
I think it was a mistake, of course, and it's not something I would have done. And I made that clear very early on, publicly and privately.
This is embarrassing, Kingston Mosque, isn't it?
I think. Look, they have reacted to something which is genuinely beyond my control. That's the article
itself.
Your
campaign's beyond your control.
The imagery and the headline of the article that was used. But read the article. The article, I stand by every single word of it, and I would repeat it again.
Quick response from you, Ali, before we move on.
Well, I think it's pure lies and deception, to be honest, because the imam in Tooting, Zac Goldsmith, claimed that he never knew him. He was never invited to any conservative events, when in fact there's tweets, there's messages, there's text messages, and there's plenty of evidence that Zac Goldsmith knew exactly who he was. He was invited to conservative events. He was campaigning for the local conservative MP in Tooting. So I think it's just lies and deception.
All right, a quick response from you, then we must move on, Mr. Goldsmith. Lies and deception, says my caller.
I'll answer the specific point. The imam you're talking about, I had never met until I bumped into him in a street and he asked for a selfie. At that point, along with thousands of other people over this campaign, I'm afraid I don't have the resources to do a CRB check on everyone who wants to do a selfie with me. That was the first I was aware of the fact that I'd even met this man. But look, this is one illustration of a whole long list of people with whom Sadiq Khan has shared platforms with or given oxygen to or made excuses for, who are on the wrong side of this debate. And I have never suggested that Sadiq Khan himself is on the wrong side of that debate, but I have suggested, and I will continue to do so, that he's shown appalling judgment in giving these people legitimacy. I echo the words of Yvette Cooper when she was talking about Jeremy Corbyn. Bad judgment. Giving these people legitimacy, they should have nothing to do with the Labour Party or mainstream politics in this country.
And before we move on, lastly, Chuka Amuna says your campaign, not you, but your campaign is dog whistle racism.
Well, he's completely wrong. This is an attempt by Labour to close down legitimate questions. I think his question should be directed at his own candidate. Why does he believe it's okay to give platforms and oxygen and legitimacy to people who are on the wrong side of the debate? Those questions have not been answered, and they should be.
Daniel's in West Hampstead. Daniel, go ahead with your question.
Morning, Mr. London, and morning, Zac.
Morning.
Zac, my question is about...
my time might come. Go on.
Sorry. My question, Zac, is about Boris's vanity project of the cycle superhighways. Will you stand by the pledge that you made on this very show, Nick Ferrari show, back in February, when you said... we will analyse the effects of the cycle superhighways, and if it is shown that they've increased emergency vehicle response times, congestion and pollution, you will rip them up and you'll radically relook at them?
Thank you very much. I mean, I was asked the question, if the policy fails, for all the reasons that you've just suggested, then like any policy that's failed, you are obliged to rethink that policy and start again. I hope the cycle superhighways will work. I believe that they will work. Vauxhall Bridge was very unpopular. It's become popular. It's considered to be something that works. But I do think there's an approach. There's a problem with the approach that TfL has taken. If we're proposing new routes, as we will be in the coming years, we don't need to make them permanent on day one. We can do what New York does and put temporary planters along those routes, try it out for a couple of months, and if it doesn't work, then no skin off anyone's nose, very little expense. We will know whether or not the policy is a good one. We will know whether or not to make it permanent, and that's the approach I'll take on controversial routes.
Quick response, Daniel, because we've reached the end of our time. Daniel.
Yeah, I think I really welcome that response. I think it's very sensible. I think that's what it should have been done in the first place.
Daniel, I will leave it there. Sorry to cut you off. We have to be fairly tight on time. Final question from me. We opened the show this morning with a story about the Afghan interpreter who helped British forces in Afghanistan, sadly one of them taking his life because it appears he was fingerprinted as it came into Italy. What do you think the British government's response should be? Because there are a number of cases before the courts as we speak.
Yeah, and I have to say, I agree. I heard the programme before I came in, and I agree with most of the listeners who called in. These are people who have taken enormous risks, not just themselves, but on behalf of their family, in the interest of this country. And I do believe that this is a moment where we should be more open-armed and more generous. And
so you're ready to take the government on it?
I think we've got to rethink this policy, yeah.
Zac Goldsmith, thank you. As the race for mayor enters the final 48 hours, you can hear from all the candidates here on LBC. The Green Party's Sian Berry joins James O'Brien at 12:45 today. UKIP's Peter Whittle speaks with Sheila Fogarty at 2:30 this afternoon. Tomorrow, Labour candidate Sadiq Khan is with James O'Brien at 11 o'clock. Caroline Pidgeon from the Lib Dems joins Sheila Fogarty at 2:30 tomorrow. These are the 12 candidates standing for mayor. They are Sian Berry for the Green Party, David Furness, BNP, George Galloway, Respect, Paul Golding, Britain First, Zac Goldsmith, Conservative, Lee Harris, Cannabis is Safer Than Alcohol, Sadiq Khan, Labour, Ankit Love, One Love Party, Caroline Pidgeon, Liberal Democrat, Sophie Walker, Women's Equality, Peter Whittle, UKIP, and Prince Zielinski, Independent. Zac Goldsmith, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to LBC 9:30 News with Lisa Aziz.
Leicester City are celebrating one of the biggest shocks in sporting history after winning the Premier League title.